What happens when a beloved morning show host finally snaps, fed up with royal privilege and polished PR? You're about to find out, because the clash between Prince Harry and the usually upbeat duo of Mark Consuelos and Kelly Ripa on Live with Kelly and Mark turned into one of the most jaw-dropping moments in daytime television history. Before we dive into the full story, make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below. How do you feel about celebrities who cross the line on live TV? That morning, the studio was as bright as ever, bathed in the familiar glow of soft lights bouncing off cheerful backdrops. Kelly Ripa looked radiant and composed in a crisp white blazer, every detail immaculate. Beside her, Mark Consuelos adjusted his navy blue tie as the countdown to Live Air began. But something felt off. The air was charged, the tension palpable, though no one could quite say why. Enter Prince Harry. He stepped onto the set with his signature stride, tailored in a charcoal suit that screamed formality, more Buckingham Palace than breakfast banter. His smile was rehearsed, the kind worn by someone who's endured thousands of cameras, but his eyes betrayed something else: discomfort, detachment. As he sat, he gave the studio a once-over with a look bordering on condescension. Kelly, ever the pro, leaned in with her usual warmth. Prince Harry, thank you so much for joining us. We know you're busy with all your amazing work, so we really appreciate you taking time to be here. The Harry didn't smile. He barely shifted in his seat. To be honest, he said, voice cool, I'm not entirely sure why I'm here. My publicist said it would be good for my image. Personally, I have far more important things to do than sit on an American morning show and talk about fluff. The temperature dropped. Mark blinked. Kelly's smile didn't falter, but for those who knew her, the flicker of annoyance was unmistakable. I see, she said, voice still chipper but laced with chill. Well, we appreciate your candor. Maybe you can share some of those more important things. Tell us about your charitable work. Harry leaned back, arms folded, a defensive posture that only added to the growing tension. I've done charity work my whole life. I was born into it. It's expected of me. But what I really want to talk about is how shows like this one contribute to misrepresenting me and my family. That was the moment Mark leaned forward, sensing the shift. Interesting. Can you give us some examples? I think our viewers would like to understand your side. Where do I even start? Harry's voice rose, his grip on calm beginning to slip. Everything I do is twisted. I protect my family, I'm called controlling. I speak against injustice, I'm labeled a whiner. I move countries to escape harassment. And suddenly I've abandoned my responsibilities. I'm done pretending to be grateful for media attention I never asked for. Kelly set her coffee mug down hard, ceramic clinking sharply against glass. You know what, Harry? I think a lot of people understand that being in the spotlight is tough. But let's be honest. You chose to do the Oprah interview. You chose to write a book revealing private family moments. You signed multi-million-dollar deals to tell your side. You can't demand privacy and then monetize your pain. You can't have it both ways. The studio fell silent. No applause, no laughter, just the quiet hum of cameras and a distant shuffle from backstage. Harry's face flushed. His hands gripped the armrests, knuckles pale. You have no idea what you're talking about, he said tightly. You sit here, in your cozy studio, making jokes with actors and asking softball questions, and you think, that qualifies you to judge what I've lived through. Mark could feel the room teetering. The atmosphere was now electric, volatile, and he did what any seasoned host would do, tried to pull things back from the edge. Harry. Mark began carefully, his tone calm but firm. I think what Kelly's trying to say is that when you share very personal details publicly, especially about family, it naturally opens the door to public dialogue. Sometimes that includes praise, and sometimes it includes criticism. That's just the world we live in now. Don't patronize me, Harry snapped, the last trace of royal composure gone. His voice, once measured, now carried the edge of open fury. I know exactly what she was trying to say, and it was out of line. I didn't come here to be lectured by morning show hosts about my life. I showed up here as a courtesy, and this is the thanks I get. Kelly's mask dropped. Gone was the bubbly TV persona. What remained was steel. Her voice, cool and sharpened with experience, cut through the air. A courtesy, she repeated. You came here as a courtesy. Let me explain something to you, Prince Harry. We've hosted presidents, Nobel laureates, war heroes, and not one of them has ever treated us, or our audience, with the level of arrogance you've displayed since you sat down. Harry rolled his eyes. Oh, please. Don't lump me in with your parade of American entertainers and politicians. I'm a royal. I've spent my life in service, not chatting with housewives over coffee mugs and daytime fluff. The insult hit like a gut punch. Mark's jaw tightened. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice to a dangerous whisper. Watch yourself, Harry. You didn't just insult my wife. You insulted the millions of people who watch this show, and the values we stand for. Harry shot up from his chair, sending it skidding backward. How noble. The great American gladiator, leaping to defend his talk show kingdom. What now? Going to challenge me to a duel? Or just call security? Mark rose too, but slower, measured. There was no threat in his movement, only gravity. The room held its breath. I don't need to threaten anyone, Mark said, steady and unflinching. But understand this, you can insult me all day. Fine, I can take it. But when you belittle my wife and our audience, people who tune in not for scandal, but for connection, you cross a line, and you don't get to cross that. Harry let out a cold, bitter laugh. How touching. The valiant soap star, protector of the studio set. Do you even know who you're talking to? I've dined with world leaders, advised heads of state. I don't take lectures from a former daytime actor who lucked into a second act. Kelly rose. She didn't raise her voice, but somehow it commanded the entire room. I've been doing this job for over 20 years, she said, eyes locked on Harry. And everything I've achieved, I earned, through sweat work and treating people with respect. Real power, Harry, isn't inherited. It's not in the bloodline. It's in how you treat the people who don't have to listen to you, but choose to. Harry's face twisted. You want to talk to me about power, he said, incredulous. You serve coffee and gossip about celebrities. I come from a 1,000-year institution that's shaped history. My ancestors ruled empires. Your greatest legacy is introducing movie trailers. Mark stepped closer, not aggressive, but direct. The kind of closeness that made sure every word landed. Your bloodline, he said slowly, your titles, your palace. That's all borrowed shine. Strip it away. What's left? What have you built with your own hands, your own grit? The words hit like a hammer. Harry blinked, opened his mouth, closed it again. For a moment, he had no answer. How dare you question what I've done? Harry finally spat. I served in combat zones. I've raised millions for charity. I've given my platform to causes that matter. Mark didn't flinch. Yes, and every single one of those doors opened for you because of the crown you now spend so much time condemning. Kelly's voice cut back in, firm, steady, and unrelenting. The military welcomed you because of your title. Charities partnered with you because you were a royal. The media covered your causes because of your name. You've had opportunities others only dream of. And instead of using that privilege to lift people up, you sit here whining about how hard it's all been. Harry stared at them. Two morning show hosts who in a matter of minutes had turned a polite promotional appearance into something else entirely. Something raw, unscripted, unforgettable. And for once, the prince had no script to fall back on. So please, Kelly said, her voice razor sharp, don't stand there pretending you've somehow overcome great adversity when your entire life has been cushioned by the ultimate privilege. Harry's hands trembled slightly. Whether from rage or something deeper was impossible to tell. You don't understand. He shot back, his voice rising. The pressure, the scrutiny, the absence of privacy. You can't possibly imagine what it's like to live with a spotlight that never shuts off. You're absolutely right, Mark replied, his voice suddenly casual. Too casual. And that made it sting all the more. We can't understand that kind of pressure, but we can understand what it means to earn everything we have. To hustle, to show up, to be grateful for our chances instead of assuming we were born entitled to them. And we sure as hell know what it means to treat people with basic human decency. Decency. Harry spat, his composure now completely gone. You've been attacking me since the second I said I had better things to do than sit here and play along with your phony little morning show. You've mocked my accomplishments, belittled my service, and dragged my name through the dirt, and now you want to talk about decency. Kelly stepped around the coffee table, moving until she was standing squarely in front of him. She didn't raise her voice, but the room shrank around her all the same. No, she said coolly. We've been responding to your behavior. You walked into our studio, sat in our chair, and from your first sentence, you made it clear you thought you were too good to be here, that we weren't worth your time, that our viewers weren't worth your time. Everything that's happened since has been a direct reaction to the arrogance you carried in with you. Harry's mouth opened. I was being honest, he said, but the conviction in his voice had started to waver. I thought Americans valued honesty. I thought that was part of your cultural identity. Mark gave a slow shake of his head, disappointment flickering behind his eyes. There's a difference, he said, between being honest and being disrespectful. You could have said you were unsure about the format. You could have said you were uncomfortable. Instead, you chose to insult our show, dismiss our work, and demean everyone who watches it. That's not honesty. That's ego. Arrogance. Harry's voice cracked slightly. I'm not arrogant. I'm tired. I'm exhausted from pretending everything I do is perfect. Do you know what it's like to shake hands and cut ribbons and smile through conversations that mean nothing, when you know there are real problems out there, and none of this solves any of them? Kelly nodded slowly. Her tone softened, but it didn't lose its weight. Actually, we do know, she said. We spend our days talking to people about their causes, their struggles, their hopes. And yeah, sometimes we cut ribbons. Sometimes we smile through lighthearted segments. But we find meaning in that, because we know that sometimes small gestures matter. Making someone feel heard matters. Reminding people they're not alone in the world, that matters. Harry stared at her, breathing heavily. So what? I'm supposed to fake it, he snapped. Pretend every charity gala and staged appearance is the most important thing on earth. I'm supposed to be grateful for being paraded around like a trained monkey. Mark didn't hesitate. No. You're supposed to recognize that you've been given platforms most people will never even dream of. You've been handed access to power, to people, to global attention. And instead of using that to make an impact, you keep using it to tell the world how hard your life has been. You don't have to pretend it's easy. But stop pretending you're the only one who's ever felt pressure. The words landed like a challenge. The air tightened. Harry's face twitched, shifting between anger and something else. Recognition, maybe. Or doubt. But whatever clarity was rising inside him, it was buried just as quickly under a wave of wounded pride. I'm not pretending, he snapped. I am the victim. I've been the victim since the day I was born. And the fact that you can't see, that just shows how blind you are to what's really going on. Kelly let out a breath that was half sigh, half laugh, completely exasperated. Harry, she said, her voice low and deliberate. Listen to yourself. You are a grown man with more money, more access, more influence than 99% of this planet will ever have. And you're standing here in our studio, throwing a tantrum because 2 morning show hosts dared to suggest that maybe, just maybe, You should be grateful for what you do have, instead of constantly angry about what you don't. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was charged, dense with everything that had been said, and everything Harry now had to decide whether he'd actually heard. "I'm not throwing a tantrum," Harry snapped. But even as the words left his mouth, his voice climbed, brittle and sharp, pushing the edge of a shout. "I'm trying to explain why your simplistic view of my life is completely wrong. You think that because I have money and a title, I should just sit back and take whatever's thrown at me. That privilege means I don't get to have feelings, or defend myself when I'm attacked." Mark stepped in again, calm but steely, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "No one's saying you can't have feelings, Harry. What we're saying is, they don't give you a free pass to treat people like garbage. Your pain doesn't justify walking into someone else's workplace and insulting them. Our team, our audience, we invited you here, we showed you respect, and you repaid it with contempt." Harry's eyes widened, incredulous. "Contempt? You've spent 20 minutes dissecting my life, questioning my choices, my integrity, and you think you've done nothing to me. This right here, this constant judgment, is exactly what I'm talking about. I get it everywhere I go." Kelly moved in closer now, her voice low, measured, but laced with fire. "Harry, we didn't come at you. We welcomed you. Thanked you for being here. We asked about your charitable work. You're the one who said this was a waste of your time. You're the one who dismissed our show as beneath you before the first question was even finished. Everything that's happened since. That's the result of your attitude. You lit this match. That's not fair." Harry protested, but his voice cracked, the force behind it fading. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his expression. "I wasn't trying to insult anyone," he muttered. "I was just being honest." "But you did insult us," Mark said quietly. "And when we tried to call it out with grace, you doubled down. When we explained why it hurt, you escalated. And when things got uncomfortable, you hid behind your title like it gave you immunity from accountability." Harry looked around the studio then, really looked. The silent crew, the paused cameras, the producers whispering in hushed panic. For a heartbeat, something like shame passed through his face, but it was gone just as fast, replaced by cold defiance. "Fine," he spat. "You want the truth. I think this whole circus is beneath me. Your show is a joke. Your questions are fluff. Millions of people wasting their mornings watching you banter about celebrity gossip while the world burns. It's pathetic." Silence. Not even a breath moved. Kelly and Mark exchanged a glance. Years of chemistry distilled into one silent decision. "You know what, Harry?" Kelly said finally, her voice soft but devastating. "You're right. This show is beneath you. Our questions aren't deep enough. Our audience isn't smart enough. And this studio, far too small for someone with an ego as inflated as yours." A Mark stepped forward, beside her now, a united front. "And that's why we're asking you to leave. Right now. We're not going to let someone sit here and trash our work, our viewers, and everyone behind these cameras." Harry's jaw dropped, stunned. "You're kicking me off your show. Do you have any idea who I am? What kind of backlash this could cause?" "We know exactly who you are," Kelly said, unmoved. "You're someone who walked in thinking your title gave you the right to treat people like they're beneath you. You were wrong, and here are your consequences. You are no longer welcome here." Mark gestured toward the door, calm but final. "Our security team will escort you out. The interview won't air as recorded, and we'll make it clear to our viewers that we don't tolerate disrespect, no matter how royal the guest." Harry stood there frozen, lips parted as if searching for a retort, but for once, no words came. And then, slowly, the cameras faded to black. Harry hesitated for just a second, caught between the instinct to salvage his image and the impulse to walk out with what dignity he thought he had left. But in the end, pride made the choice for him. "This is a mistake," he said coldly. His voice low but edged with threat. It landed with a dull thud in the thick tension that filled the studio. "You have no idea what you've just done, or who you're dealing with. This won't end well for either of you." Kelly's smile was smooth, almost rehearsed, the kind that came from years of live TV. "Security," she said without looking away from Harry. "Please escort Prince Harry out of the building." Then, more directly, "And Harry, if you ever decide to return for an actual conversation, like an adult, you know where to find us." As the security team began to move toward him, Harry adjusted his jacket and lifted his chin high, a pose clearly meant to project dignity, but one that looked more like a spoiled child trying to save face. "You'll regret this," he muttered, but the words rang hollow, more like the last shot of someone who knew he'd already lost. "The only thing we regret," Mark said as Harry was ushered toward the door, "is wasting 30 minutes of airtime on someone who didn't deserve it." The studio door clicked shut behind him, a crisp, final sound that echoed louder than anything else had. For a moment, the room was still. Kelly and Mark stood there, letting the silence settle. Then Kelly turned back to the camera, her familiar smile sliding back into place with professional ease. "Well," she said brightly, "that wasn't exactly how we expected today's show to go." She gave a little shrug, then continued, her voice warm but steady. "Sometimes, doing what's right doesn't feel easy. But it matters, and we're proud we stood by our principles." Mark leaned back in his chair, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Absolutely. This show has always been about respect. Respect for our audience, our guests, and each other. When someone disrespects that, we address it. Plain and simple." Kelly looked directly into the lens. Her tone softened but stayed firm. "We hope you understand why we took the action we did today. And we want you to know, we will always stand up for what this show represents: respect, kindness, and meaningful connection with the people who truly matter. Our amazing viewers." She held that gaze just a second longer before closing. "So, what did you think about that explosive moment? Were we right to ask Prince Harry to leave? Or do you think we should have handled things differently?" Mark chimed in. "Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. And let us know in the comments what you think happens when ego meets accountability. Live on television.